Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show. It's the Jacked Up Review Show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show.
Although not always from moment to moment.
It doesn't slow down, does it? So here with me today for our special 10 list is Beverly Gray, Beverly and Movie Land blog, former Roger Corman employee, and her books such as Blood-Sucking Cockroaches and
Not quite. Roger Corman, blood sucking.
yeah, sorry, I knew
Cockroaches and driller killers. Get it right.
I know, I didn't get it right. And screenwriter and blogger and author. How are you today? And
I am as good as one can be in current times.
yes, it's like when I run. He had COVID at the end of it.
You fade out every once in a while, or your voice.
Yeah. I just noticed just now. It's like one of Roger's post-war disaster movies. But then he added a. Yeah, well, we're not becoming mutant monsters just yet from this virus, but you never know.
Yeah, that's a thought.
Don't get Charles Band has already jumped on that kind of zombie being a movie. Oh, and it's just so cool. I've just once again, like I said before, it's just been always a delight reading your take on various classic noir. Done by your Miss Robinson retrospect book, as well as your just individual blog posts and how different formulas are repeated, decades later and become either award-winning movies or just current movie trends. And it's just been cool seeing you do that retrospect with everything from, A Star is Born to, The Revenant and all that other stuff. Just seeing how so many B pictures got reimagined indirectly, and as well as just just certain tropes and cliches that we as moviegoers embrace. We like seeing that kind of subgenre kind of movies, survival movies, romance movies, westerns, all that. So it's really been retrospect on that as a whole.
Thank you very much.
Hi. We're here to discuss Ron Howard. What are his 10 best pictures?
Well, should I start with that?
Yeah, I'll let you start off number 10.
Oh, so I have to work backwards.
I mean, we can, if you want to work up just from number 1 to later, that's fine too. I just,
Okay.
I got 5. So
yeah, we may overlap though. We may have some of the same 5. So
that's
we have
fine.
to fight that out then.
No, I'll come up with an alternative if you name a movie that.
Okay. All right. My number 5 movie is one of the more recent ones that Ron Howard has made. It's very different. One thing I should say about Ron Howard, from the first time he became a filmmaker, he did not want to be typecast. He was, as an actor, certainly was typecast. As a director, I think that's one of the reasons he loved directing, that he could choose projects that were all over the map. He could choose big stories and little stories and funny things and
Exactly.
serious things. And he wanted to be versatile, and he certainly has proved to be versatile. So number 5 on my list is from 2008. It's a small movie based on a play, based on a historical moment, an important historical moment. It's called Frost Nixon, Frost /
Oh, yeah. Great pick. The minute you said play, I'm like, oh, here we go.
And it stars Frank Langella as Richard Nixon, having a kind of surprisingly in-depth series of conversations with the radio host David Frost, who's played by Michael Sheen. So there are other people in the movie as well, but the heart of the movie is the relationship between these two and our close look at a very important historical figure, Richard Nixon, dealing with anger, regret, all sorts of things as he looked back on his failed presidency, or presidency that he was required to abandon in a certain very important part of our nation's history. So it's a powerful little movie. It was certainly recognized as such. 5 Oscar nominations, didn't get any prizes, but a respected little intimate psychological film.
Very well put. It's definitely one. It's just joy seeing how it's all staged. And you know, I've seen some rare naysay when they talk about, oh, the speech isn't followed direct verbatim. It's like, well, that's okay. You know, it's going to be dramatized at some point or another. So, I mean, as long as you are into the movie, you want to know what's happening, you know how it ends. That is a rare feat to make a movie that stunning, that captivating, and I also like how Howard's masterclass, he even redoes scenes from this movie for, you know, the students taking the class, and he has on professional actors reenact it, and he shows how to stage it for low budget versus big budget. It's very captivating. If you can ever see that lesson, if you even want the login, I'll give it to you. It's great.
I would love that. I would love to see how he handled that and how he teaches that. That sounds wonderful to me, and I thank you in advance.
By all means, yeah. And like you say, it's definitely one of the few movies it's like based on a play, but it doesn't read as such. And that's not to be an anti, you know, play reference or anything. It's just, you know, some stuff adapts well, some of it, you know, you got to be very familiar with the material before you watch it. And it's just one of those, you jump right in, and it's just, you could have sworn it was written by, you know, one of Aaron Sorkin or Robert Towne, but it's just, it dazzles. That's a good pick. Yeah.
Actually, I should mention who it was written by. It was written by Peter Morgan, who has made a very nice career for himself. He's British, and he's made quite a career for himself writing about the British royal family. A lot of those things,
Nice.
yes, having to do with, I think, the movie The Queen, for one, and I believe the TV series The Crown as well. I mean, he's kind of
Okay.
so the guy knows something about powerful, famous figures and how to bring them to these things. All right.
Okay.
Do you say one, or do I continue?
I'll let you continue this episode. Just, you know,
Okay.
that way I don't overlap or make you
All
have
right.
to.
Okay. number 4, interestingly enough, I discovered is also written by Peter Morgan and is also a recent film. This is the most recent film on my list. And I must say, I haven't seen every single recent Ron Howard movie, and some that I have seen, I haven't much cared for. I think he's tried things that haven't worked. The Western, The Missing, I'm not crazy about.
Yeah.
The Da Vinci Code, I think he did about as well as you can do with a plot that always struck me as kind of silly, but
Right.
silly in a grandiose way, in an operatic.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of stuff he's made, and then he's also, I should add, made several documentaries recently, sometimes on subjects that surprised me. He's made a documentary about the popularity of the Beatles as they toured the U.S., and a documentary about the opera singer Pavarotti, and also just recently, brand new, a film about the rebuilding of Paradise, California, which was destroyed in one of our many California fires recently. So I'm not
Yes,
crazy
very
about
much
all
so.
these things, yes, but this movie from 2013 didn't get as much acclaim as I would have hoped. But again, very different from Ron Howard. It's a movie that doesn't seem like a Ron Howard movie, a Ron Howard subject, but it's exciting as all get out, and that is Rush.
Yeah, that's one where basically, whatever you're thinking, it's definitely one of those where he decided to take a very key racing event and, get very uncanny actors to be in the role. I'll let you take it away. Yeah, sorry.
No,
Haven't seen
no
it in a while.
problem. It's an action film. It is something of a biopic in the sense that the rivalry, which he's writing about, is about two very different kinds of racers, Formula One racers in Europe. One is played by Chris Hemsworth. He plays someone named James Hunt. And I am not a racing fan. I do not know anything about Formula One racing. That's, I guess, a feature of how good this movie is, that I was enthralled by this movie, and I don't give a damn about the subject. Very exciting. And Daniel Bruhl, who plays Niki Lauda, the I believe Austrian racer, who's Chris Hemsworth. The one he plays is the kind of the devil may care British guy, lots of sex appeal and kind of daring and crazy. And Niki Lauda, as played by Daniel Bruhl, is the one who is kind of an introspective guy, very almost a robotic guy. He's like one with the car. He's
He was also in the
technical master.
Yeah, he was also in the WikiLeaks movie the same year. So
Yeah,
interesting
he's a guy.
actor.
But the movie climaxes in a very dramatic race in Tokyo, as I recall, in the rain. And just watching that movie, and I watched it in a theater, and it really is something that ideally you should see in a theater. I saw it in one of those theaters with couches, and so there I was on my couch, just feeling like I was out on the racetrack in the rain with, it was a thrilling movie.
Yeah, very true. It's definitely. I think once again, this is much like Frost Nixon can interest anyone regardless of their interest in politics. This is definitely one kind of like a boxing movie. You might find it interesting even if not the most into racing.
That's right.
And I might have to give this one another go. Just see it again. Yeah. See how it's aged. Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm on number 3. I had a problem with number 3 because I wanted to choose a comedy. I wanted to choose one of those movies that I could just watch for pleasure. And he's made a lot of those. And so I'm going to squeeze a lot of things into the same category. This is what used to be thought of as typical Ron Howard, particularly early in his career. starting in the around 1980. Movies that are fun, charming, amiable, um, and have great people in them. So I'll name a few and I'll tell you which one I think maybe belongs on the list. One I have not seen in a long time, but I remember it oh so fondly. And I believe I've heard they're going to try to remake it.
Oh, really?
Flash from 1984. That's with, of course, Tom Hanks, the at that time TV guy, Tom Hanks. He was not a big movie star when he made this movie. It gave him a career. As the young man who was afraid of swimming and who falls in love with a mermaid. It's got the sweetest ending. It's just a lovely, lovable movie, and really set Ron Howard off. It's not his first movie as a director by any means, but it's his first big time movie.
Yeah. Is there someone walking up and downstairs in the background? Sorry, I heard a bunch of thumbs.
What you're hearing, if you're hearing something here, it's because there's a very big construction project next door.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry.
So
okay.
I can't do anything about that.
No. That's all good. You sounded fine. I just heard every once in a while a thump. I'm like,
that's what it is. Yes, I live with that, and have for the last year. The second one of this group is a movie that Ron Howard, who loves to be in charge. This was a project that came to him. He didn't have quite as much control over it as he had subsequently, but it helped to really make him. The movie is Cocoon from 1985, which is about, well, I guess one reason I like the movie is it treats old people with dignity. And as a teacher of screenwriting, I've read across an awful lot of scripts about adorable oldsters, and I really hate them, especially as I get older myself. But it treats some wonderful, wonderful actors like Don Amici, who won an Oscar for this, Jack Gilford, Maureen Stapleton, Hume Cronin, Jessica Tandy, fabulous actors. And it's about people who've reached a point in their lives when their bodies are falling apart and they find the magic that will allow them to live forever, and it involves leaving Earth and going to another planet. So it's all could be considered kind of cornball, but it's a movie with real heart and real beauty. And I should particularly salute Wilfred Brimley, who's fabulous in it. There's the scene where he tells his little grandson goodbye is one of the most moving scenes you can ever imagine. And I should also mention that it says something about Ron Howard, the scene. Apparently each of these, he was quite young when he directed this, and he was rather intimidated by directing these really famous people. I believe they had been cast before he came aboard. And I mean, these are legendary actors, and he at first wasn't quite sure if they'd listen to him.
Exactly.
But,
Sorry, go ahead.
One thing he discovered is that each of them approached acting differently. Jack Gilford had been in vaudeville. He had his way of doing things. Hume Cronin, whom I had the pleasure of meeting once also, is a very serious, analytic guy. He had it all worked out. Don Amici, he made his mark in the 30s and 40s. He was used to being directed. Tell me what to do and I'll do it. So each of them was different. And Don Amici is the one who ends up, and also I love the fact that there's a scene, somehow the part of the Fountain of Youth aspect of it has to do with this magic substance in a swimming pool. And there's a scene where some of these old guys are having soaked in this elixir are now acting like teenagers. And Ron had gone out and gotten stunt doubles for them so that they could do all this stuff, diving and cannonballs and romping around. And they were insulted. And they said, "What do you mean? We can do these things." And they could, and they did. And Don Amici, part of the reason he won an Oscar is for this great scene where he break dances, at the age of, I think he was in his late 70s or early 80s. So very sweet, sweet movie, maybe corny, but one that had a lot to do with moving Ron Howard forward in Hollywood, and just a movie you can't help loving. And by the way, there's a terrible sequel he had nothing to do with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny you bring up those two because those were both shot by his recurring cinematographer, Don Peterman, who's probably better known for Star Trek 4, Flashdance, Men in Black, Point Break, and Get Shorty. And,
That's one thing I've learned about Ron Howard. He is exactly as nice as you would hope that he is, which doesn't mean he's not in control, that he's not the boss. But this is a nice guy. This is a guy who really believes in collaboration, and he uses the same people again and again and again. His editors, I think, have been with him consistently for years. His staff.
Yeah.
Everyone loves
that's actually, and that's very well stated because that he goes to town in terms of talking about that on his masterclass as well. Just how, let everyone know that they mean something to the production, and he really does state it constantly because he wants to, help every kind of person during the classroom meeting, and at the same time, this is an online virtual class for those in the listen. And yeah, he talked about how he didn't know everything and just complimented how, you got to keep learning, got to keep seeing, getting an idea of how people take a while to get certain stuff done, but, deflate the ego a bit and just, avoid any kind of conflict by he would always tell the actors, please, he would keep asking their opinions, making it clear, I do value it, I'm just because I'm in charge doesn't mean I know the whole thing, while at the same time not letting anyone stomp on over him. And he mentioned he rarely had any kind of issues working with any kind of actor, and it's like, that's great,
including Russell Crowe. They love each other. Let me tell you my favorite Ron Howard story that I unearthed when I was working on the book. I found a technical guy. His name is Garth Thorpe. He's a special effects guy. And he had worked on How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which is not on my list of favorites, I must say. Garth came aboard. Ron Howard had not done a huge amount of special effects work, not like the Grinch. And so he had a lot of new people on this set, and he called them together. And he said, this is how it works on my set. He said, we're all in this together. It's a collaborative medium. If you have any ideas, I want to hear them. If you have something, if you see a problem in the making, I want to hear about it. That's the way it is. And Garth was not an innocent at this point, and he had just come off some other big budget movie, and he thought that, he had heard, he was not naive. He had heard those words before from a lot of other Hollywood directors. And then what ended up happening, of course, is when you followed through and you had your ideas and you had your sharing of concerns, you'd get the usual director being the usual jerk. That's the way he put it. But to his great surprise, for the first time in his career, this was true in a Ron Howard movie. This was absolutely true. And other people can pay lip service to this idea of collaboration. But in a Ron Howard film, it's what really happens. And then the other really moving part of the story is poor Garth had to leave the production at the midpoint because he was diagnosed with cancer. And he had to go through various treatments, and the shoot kept on going for months and months. And they still continued to pay him, which was really decent. And at a certain point, he realized that he was getting better, that he was bored out of his mind, and was there any way he could come back? And they said, "Great, come on back. We're so glad to see you." He said, "I'm so sorry that I missed being a part of that shoot from start to finish. But on the other hand, what I was going through in my own life, I don't know how I could have handled it without the graciousness of the kind of the Ron Howard family. So I'm always happy to tell people what a special guy this is."
Well, it's funny you bring that up. I think he does briefly touch on it. Obviously, not as detailed as you beautifully stated it, but I'm just saying I think he did. He does hit on how it's like, this is work, but it doesn't have to be a chore. This is going to be long, but it doesn't have to feel like eternity. He does hit on a lot of stuff like that, and so that makes my night. It's good to know that he made someone who had a successful career with hit and miss, talent, and got to go out, on a highlight saying, "Hey, I finally worked with someone who's, is both talented and just the nicest person." So
Yeah.
that really makes my day. That's great.
Glad to share that. All right. Again, all these comedies I've squished together. This one's probably the best. Probably the one, if I had to pick one, I would pick Parenthood from 1989. It's just a movie with a lot of wonderful actors, and it's interesting how this film came about. It came about because Ron, who has 4 children, his producing partner, I'm forgetting his first name,
Brian Grazer.
Brian
Yeah.
Grazer, and a writing team. They were all on a flight. I think they were working on Willow, and between them all, they had tons of children. Everybody had young children, and they were just sort of sharing some of the crazy and awful and wonderful things that happen when you had a big family unit, and that everybody contributed something to the story, which became a story of this big extended family with Steve Martin at its center. And Jason Robards is the old father, and good parents and bad parents, and good kids and bad kids, and a lot of lovely, lovely actors. It's a very sweet, a very human movie, and I was thinking now how much I'd like to see it again.
Yeah, inspired a TV show with the
Right.
same name, but
Yes.
I mean, this is one of the few rare, early '90s movies where you're talking about, very mature subject matter, and you're just having to show just the natural ability of it, naturalness, the how it's not always comfortable to talk about, and it's like, and you have your funny moments, you have your dramatic moments, and so that was an interesting balance to have to strike and have to have various cast and very unrecognizable moments doing all kinds of stuff that you typically don't see them in those kind of roles even since then. So it was interesting seeing how he had a lot to kind of tackle and approach and just tread very carefully, because it was very careful material. It's like, yeah, everyone's had an embarrassing moment like this growing up or heard about something like that,
Yeah, and some of the stories are not funny at all, but some are hilarious, and some are simultaneously both. Wonderful people.
Some you might laugh afterwards saying, "Remember so and so taking on that kind of role?" It's like,
yeah. And everybody's in it. Mary Steenburgen's in it. Keanu Reeves is in it. And I should mention, there was a kid I remember, the troubled, like preteen, whose name was Leaf Phoenix, and of course his name actually is Joaquin Phoenix, but he was calling himself Leaf at that point, with the rest of his family. So watch for him if you see that movie.
I will watch. I've been due for a rewatch, so I will definitely. Oh, it's actually on
Yeah.
Showtime this month. So
I won't go at great length, but 2 others that are relatively light and quite funny in moments. One is The Paper from 1994. Again, an ensemble cast headed by Michael Keaton, about the newspaper biz. Ron Howard as a high schooler, was a student journalist and always loved everything to do with newspapers. And I think he had a lot of pleasure writing about this little big New York City paper and the big New York City paper that's trying to lure Michael Keaton away, and his wife Marissa Tomei is about to give birth any second, and, but she's an ace reporter.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it's not one that everybody's seen, but it's a lot of fun, and it certainly is a tribute to good journalism. And the final one in this kind of comedy block, which nobody seems to like it as much as I do. And part of its misfortune is that it came out in the same year as another movie on a similar topic. And the other movie was The Truman Show, and this movie is Ed TV from 1999. It is a really, really funny movie about a guy who volunteers to be on camera 24/7, and the entire country starts watching and commenting and directing his life. And there's something quite contemporary about it. Obviously, it's reflecting those reality TV trends, but in a way that is quite funny. Matthew McConaughey stars in it.
It's definitely came out at the right time. If you,
what's her name? What's the female lead's name?
I think it's Elfman, and
she's isn't she in Dharma and Greg? Her name?
Yeah, that's what I said. Jenna Elfman. Yeah.
Oh, Jenna Elfman. Yes. And Woody Harrelson plays Matthew McConaughey's brother, which is a great combination right there. Just a completely light movie. The Truman Show is a great deal more serious, and it came out first, which is why it got more attention. And I also liked the advertising campaign for Ed TV, which is "Fame on You," which I thought was quite clever. All right.
Well, that's a good point, because I mean, it definitely came out like at the right time when everyone was kind of embracing material of this, and I think you could have only done it back then, because if you did it now, you would have to, pretty much the selling point would be you would have to have some kind of gimmick, or there'd have to be something else that you had to mention, that's more modern day. And it's like this movie, it's making references, but it's not relying on them. It's its own movie.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All, sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed, and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Hey, I heard you like movies.
I heard you like to hustle.
I heard you like podcasts.
Well, guess what?
There's a podcast for you out there called The Home Video Hustle.
Damn right.
Every Friday, we talk about whatever movie PJ picks out the bag. What does that mean? Every Wednesday on our YouTube page, I put a bunch of movies in a bag, and PJ picks one out at random. And then we just watch it. We talk about it for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever we feel like doing, wherever the conversation leads us.
But do we actually talk about the movie?
Most of the time. Tangents galore.
Yes.
So believe me, we may be a movie podcast, but it's not always about movies. We may talk about video games,
Music.
Yeah, that's the big one, music. Sometimes we might get a little bit of politicalness in there.
Yes.
Sometimes we may just, we know what we like to do. We like to tell stories, PJ.
Ah, yes.
I am the master storyteller
Yes.
of the podcast realm. Undefeated. So if you like to hear about movies, video games, whatever foolishness comes to our mind, the most random stuff you could think of, check out the Home Video Hustle. You can find us on the Stitchers,
Yes.
the Google Play,
Yes.
Apple Podcasts,
What else?
Podbean,
What else?
Podcast Addict,
Goddamn.
all that. Ain't no reason you can't get your hustle on. We everywhere, worldwide, baby.
Hustle, motherfucking hustle.
Hey, we can't cuss in the promo, PJ.
Ah.
We gotta be family friendly. There may be podcasts out there that don't want his hair say
Ah. Ah.
all
Yeah.
that good fun stuff.
Well, you.
Yeah. don't run the listeners away, PJ.
Ah, I'm sorry.
But this is going kind of long.
Yes.
So we'll end this and say, hey, check out the Home Video Hustle every Friday on all the various podcast outlets. Peace.
Peace.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And while Witch didn't make it to the top of the world, he did make the Gangs of Hollywood podcast. So join the gang and enjoy a movie review podcast about movie gangs, gangsters, mobsters, and the mayhem they cause. You can find GOH Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GOH Pod at www.gohpod.com, as well as your favorite podcast listening app. And remember, say hello to your little friend for me.
If you take two old punk rockers who are past their prime, put them in front of a movie screen, and give them a podcast, what do you get? Cinema Punks. Cinepunks. It's the mixtape of movies.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of it.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history
up.
all popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was
How
going to be
did
a
you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
It's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. Whether one likes plot holes or gratuitous movies, it's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
We now continue with our program.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up review show.